One of the wonderful things about math is that everything you learn can be added on. So everything that you're doing is built on a previous piece of knowledge that you've gained in a math class. So now that we've gone over factoring polynomials, we can move on to working with quadratic equations and factoring them. So let's begin by looking at something like this. A quadratic equation is an equation like this that ends in 0. When you factor them, eventually they're going to have two parentheses and it's going to be equal to 0. I want you to consider an equation that looks like this. Okay? Both of these factors here equal 0. That means that either one of these is equal to 0, because when you multiply anything by 0, the answer is 0. So A could be 0 or B could be 0. And that's where this process begins and how we can start to find solutions for a quadratic equation like this, which could be one of these. So let's begin, and you will actually find out that this is actually easier and not as intimidating as it looks or sounds. So we have a problem here. 2x squared minus 2x minus 24, and you can hear my dog walking around. He's interested in this too. So we divide each of these by 2, clearly, and now we have x squared minus x minus 12, but it still equals 0. Our goal is to figure out if any of these values here is a solution of this equation. So we need to continue to factor things out. So we break it up into parentheses here. And looking at this, well, we know it starts with x. We know that, well, it's a negative value here, so one of these is positive and one of these is negative. Now, what two numbers, when multiplied together, equal 12, negative 12, and what two numbers, when added together, equal negative 1? Well, if we go down all of the factors of 12, we know that 4 and 3 are factors of 12. So if we put a 4 here and a 3 here, let's see what we get. We have a negative 4x added to a positive 3x. That gives us a negative x, and there we have our factors for this quadratic equation. We're still not there yet, though. We need to figure out if one of these is a solution to this equation. So let's look at our factors here. Well, we know that 2 does not equal 0, so that is not a solution. Our next one is x plus 3 equals 0. Well, we want to solve for x, and in order to solve for x, we need to isolate the x. So we can simply move that 3 over here and turn it into a negative, and our answer is negative 3. So clearly we see that x equals negative 3, but let's see if this one is an answer as well. So x negative 4 equals 0. We need to isolate the x, so we bring the negative 4 over here and turn it into a positive. That gives us x equals 4. Well, this solution is x negative 4, so this is not a solution. Our only solution in this problem is x equals negative 3. Let's move on to the next problem. We're going to do exactly the same thing. We're going to determine which of these values given is a solution for this equation, and we're going to do exactly the same process. We're going to solve this quadratic equation by factoring. So if we break this up into parentheses and equal it to 0, well, we know we have an x here and an x here. We know, because we have a negative value here, that one of these is negative and one of these is positive. Now, what two numbers, when multiplied together, give us 15, and when added together, give us 2? Well, let's see here. If we add negative 5 and positive 3, or, a positive 5 and a negative 3, we do get negative 15. Positive 5 times negative 3 is negative 15, and we get a positive 2. Now we need to continue going so we can solve for this quadratic equation. X plus 5 equals 0. Well, we now need to move the 5 over here. That gives us x equals negative 5. Oh, and look, we have a solution. Let's see if this one's a solution here. X Negative 3 equals 0. Moving the 3 to the other side gives us x equal 3, and we have another solution. Moving on to our next problem. We're going to use the zero property to solve this equation here. Well, we can see it does not end in 0, but it does end in value. And we know with basic algebra, if we move some numbers around and variables around, we can find out how to solve a problem. That's the beauty of algebra. So let's do this. We have x squared plus 7x plus 12. Well, if we move that 72 into this equation, now becomes 72, we now have a quadratic equation. We just need to combine some values here. So negative 72 and positive 12 gives us negative 60. And we go ahead and add in these other two terms. So we have positive 7x and x squared, and that equals 0. Now we can begin to find solutions for this quadratic equation. So let's look at some factors of the number 60 to see what these last two terms are. Well, we know the first two terms are x and x, and we know that one is negative and one is positive because we are dealing with a negative value here in that final term. So our factors of 60 can be 60 and 1, 30 and 2, 15 and 4. What else goes into 60? Well, we do know that 12 and 5 go into 60. So what two numbers of these factors when multiplied together equals 60 and when added together equals 7? Well, it looks like our closest difference is here between 12 and 5, and we're looking for a positive value, so we put the 12 over here and the negative 5. That means we get negative 5x and positive 12x. Positive 12x subtract 5x gives us 7x. Great, now we can move on to finding our solution. We now have x plus 12 equals 0. We want to move that 12 to the other side of the equal sign to give us x equals negative 12. There is one solution. And then we're going to work with x negative 5. X negative 5 equals 0. We move the negative 5 to the other side of the equal sign. That gives us x equals 5. And there is our other solution. So now we have just solved, using the zero property, we have just solved this equation. Let's move on to our final equation. Using the zero property, we're going to solve this equation. Again, it looks intimidating, but it's actually rather easy. So let's begin by bringing all of this stuff to the other side of the equal sign. So we have 6x squared plus 8 negative 20x positive 8 equals 0. Now let's set this up so it looks like a quadratic equation that we can factor. So we have 6x squared, and we're going to move that 20x over here, negative 20x, and then 8 and 8 equal 16. Now we have a quadratic equation here that when we simply look at it, we know, oh look, we can divide everything here by 2. So let's just pull out the 2, which gives us an equation that looks like this. Well, 6 divided by 2 is 3, so 3x squared, negative 10x plus 16 divided by 2 is 8. Now we can begin to factor this out to figure out what our solutions are. So coming down here, if we look at this, we have 3x, apologize, this is a squared value, 3x and x, because it's a prime number, we can't split it up. So now we have 3x and x. We also have 8 over here, which is a positive number. Well, we know that's positive, so obviously both of these in here are going to be negative, because two negatives, when multiplied together, give us a positive value. Okay, now what two numbers, when multiplied together, now we need to think about that 3 over here. What two numbers, when multiplied together, give us 8, and when added together, give us a negative 10. It sounds intimidating and looks intimidating, but if we just simply look at our factors, we know that factors of 8 are 8, 1, 4, and 2. Well, if we put the 4 on the inside here and the 2 here, let's see what we get. Negative 2 times 3x is negative 6x, plus negative 4x gives us negative 10x. So we have factored this out, and now we can find the solution. Well, 2 does not equal 0, so that's not a solution. X negative 2, let's move on to that one. That one's our simplest one to work with first. X negative 2 equals 0. If we move the 2 to the other side, we have x equals 2. There's our first solution. Now we have this one here. It's a bit tricky, but it's easy to solve. We have 3x negative 4 equals 0. All we need to do is isolate that x, and we have our solution. It's not as complicated as it sounds. So let's move the 4 to the other side. We now have 3x equals 4. Now, we know that the opposite of multiplication is division, so we can simply move that 3 underneath the 4 to get us x equals 4 over 3, and there is our second solution. And we just found all the solutions to the quadratic equation here from this equation here. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this video helps you to understand better quadratic equations. I am Gabby, and don't forget to seize the day.